My father said he had a young drug salesman come through his office, and he said he was quite a presentable young guy and impressive. And he asked my father, "Do you think, Dr. Garrett, that a drugstore would go well in Siesta Key?" And my father said, "Yes, I think it would. I'm glad to hear it. Something like that is in the offing."
And he started the store in 1958. And it was a lot of hard work. It was a very lean time in Sarasota, and especially Siesta Key. A lot of people would come in and they would say, "John, I don't know why you decided to start a store out here. It's just a spit of sand. Nobody wants to live out here. There's very few people. You're never going to survive." Well, he persevered, and through hard work and dedication and good customer service, he developed quite a following on Siesta Key.
I think John may have been the first person that I ever met on the Key. My daughter and I had arrived, and we had to go to the grocery store and the drugstore. I walked in and I said, "Jennifer, I've never been in a drugstore like this." It was just amazing, wonderful store. And walking down the aisle, I said hello to a man, and we didn't stop and talk, but I later found out that was John.
By 1959, when the fountain was going and he had ice cream, I was not allowed to touch the ice cream until I came down to the store. He would put a floor mop in my hands, and I had to sweep the entire floor. Then I would go over to the register. He would give me a nickel. Then we would walk around to the soda fountain. He would give me a dish of ice cream, and then I had to pay for it with my nickel. So I think there were some lessons he was trying to instill about work and rewards.
Going places with him, just if you were going to the store or whatever, it was miserable to me because it would take an hour to do a 5-minute chore because he was so welcoming to talking to everyone in the community. It would take 5 minutes to talk to this person, and then we would go 10 feet and he would talk 5 minutes with somebody else. So as a kid, it was miserable. But in hindsight, looking back, he just loved the community and he had time for everybody. And it just showed in his approach and his just willingness to just engage and take time to be a part of their lives.
The thing that I loved about him is he would call everyone after anything that you did. He would call to follow up to see how you were doing. Whether it was a work event or after you came home from vacation, he always called you that evening to see how it went. Or with his grandkids, he would, if he couldn't get to a baseball game or a school event, he always called to see how it went. He was so interested in you and how you were doing.
Boy Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And he lived all those. My father was an Eagle Scout. His brother was an Eagle Scout. All of our children, the boys, were Scouts, and his grandchildren are all Scouts. Matter of fact, 4 of the grandchildren are Eagle Scouts, and 2 are currently working on their Eagle Scouts. Every morning he would come in when we were kids, and he would wake us up by a revelry call, you know, and he would do that very loud and not in an alarming, mean way, not like a drill sergeant, but in a friendly, loving way, but by no means. He had a very deep, dark voice. It was loud, and he was like a human alarm clock, if you will, but in a fun way. It was fun to get up in the morning because of it. At night, when we would go to bed, when we were little, he would draw on our backs, scratch our backs. It might be draw a picture of something in the room, or it might be a math problem or a spelled word on our back, and we'd have to guess what it was. Just that was my takeaway. He was always there. Worked hard. You know, that was very important, as you guys know. But he was just there for us as a father, kind, generous man.
One of the things I remember about my dad is that he loved ice cream, and we shared our love of ice cream together. So sometimes he would pick me up after school, and I knew I could convince him that we needed to get ice cream. which is actually probably the reason he picked me up. That was probably his plan. But I always thought it was me convincing him that we had to get some ice cream.
The question came up about the origin of the Siesta Key pelican. That started when my cousin, Debbie Ames, came down from Connecticut, and my mother decided to take her to Florida Land. I went with them, of course, and during lunch at Florida Land, which was an attraction for like 10 years in Osprey, my cousin said, well, why isn't there a newspaper on Siesta Key? My mother thought that was a great idea. We went home that evening and she actually presented it to Dad, who also thought it was a great idea. The Pelican was first started using an advertising agency, which turned out to be very expensive. So the newspaper moved its offices to the back porch of our house on Featherbed Lane.
So he was trying to figure out how to promote his new drugstore. And so he and his wife at that time put out this 6-page tabloid newspaper in March of 1971. And it was full of a lot of homespun little tidbits of what was going on in Siesta Key, what people were doing, who was there, etc. And that helped promote John's drugstores. I think most of us also know the rest of that story, that the drugstore business grew. He had many drugstores around Sarasota that served the community for a long time. And then, of course, the Pelican Press was the successor to the Key News of the Key. And that became a pillar of Siesta Key and for Sarasota as well.
Another fond memory I have of working with John, particularly on the loan committee, is that every week we would go over the prospects that we had that we were trying to get into our bank. Steve Kunk and I were formerly with the old NCB, old Ellis Bank, and one of the big customers back then was Club Mary. I'm sure a lot of the guys in this room tonight know about Club Mary. Anyway, so we were sitting down with John going over the prospect list, and I'd put Club Mary on there. And John kind of looked over the paper, and he kind of gave me that kind of glance that he would give you when he was questioning. He said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "Tram, you need to remember, if you lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas." And needless to say, we didn't bring that name up as a prospect for our bank again.
We at Admiral Travel have had the good fortune of working with John and Rita for many years and planning some wonderful travel experiences. As a photographer, John was a sound photographer with good technical understanding of what makes a good photograph. One of his biggest photographic challenge was transitioning from 35mm to digital. An important part of his travels and life and children and family was in the 35mm days, and making that transition to digital was a real effort. John grabbed it with both hands. In this photograph, we are in the Linyanti region of northern Botswana. For anyone being at eye level and being this close to a mature bull elephant in the wild can be rather intimidating. As you can see, John is not looking away, a testament to the strength of his character.
I'll tell you this, that John was tough negotiator. He wanted $1 million for the Pelican Press. Wouldn't budge from that number. I didn't want to pay $1 million. I didn't think it was worth $1 million. But I finally gave in because we wanted to buy the Pelican Press. And I said, all right, so how about this, John? We'll give you $500,000, $600,000 down, and how about you holding paper on the remainder for about 5 years? He's, sort of hedged and thought about it, and he goes, okay. So I leave. A week or so later, we set up a meeting on a Friday afternoon. And I came to his office with a contract to close the deal. I handed him the contract. He was sitting behind his desk. He's reading through it, and he looks up and he says, "Nah, not going to do it. Not going to do it. I want all cash. I said, I can't do that. So those discussions ended. I was disappointed about that. And it was, I think, like 3 months later, the announcement comes out that John had sold the Pelican Press to Journal Communications in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I later found out that, I'm pretty sure this is true, that John sold it for $1.3 million in cash. He got more than he wanted. And so as those things go, big company from Milwaukee, big media company, they came down, and you know the rest of the story. We ended up buying the Pelican Press in 2011.
I'm honored to have known John Davidson. His advice was always first class. His presentation was always first class. He loved this club. The club loved him. But really his legacy, which will live on in this club forever, is an event called the Lighting of the Fleet. Lighting of the Fleet kicks off our holiday season, our Christmas time, and it's a very family-oriented event. Lighting of the Fleet is when all the boats in our marina light the lights, pin lights, Christmas lights on their boats, and we all enjoy that festivity. But he took this one step further. After the Lighting of the Fleet, he invited everybody into the club to sing Christmas carols, and that became a yearly tradition. I've been here for 20 years, and John Davidson has been in our living room with his family, and they would be singing Christmas carols with the rest of the club. This is probably one of our most well-attended club events, and it's a family event. Those of you who know the Field Club, we pride ourselves on family, and John Davidson really took that to another level and portrayed the importance of the family. But his memory will be here forever in the Lighting of the Fleet, and then around Christmas, we'll all remember John Davidson.
John discovered that the group at the Field Club who took weekend cruises had never been to the Keys. And so we set up a trip to the Keys, and it was very, very popular. I think we had about 12 boats that went on that cruise, and John and Rita were on board. Key West is very exciting. It's kind of offbeat and a little crazy. We did a lot of wandering around, went to some wonderful restaurants. There's so much to see on Key West that John picked up a couple of baby palm trees while we were there. And those came back with us, and I believe John found other palms, and the backyard in Sanderling ended up with a lot of palm trees. And in cold weather, John had found old electric blankets that he managed to plug in to protect them against the cold, and so he grew a lot of palm trees. Anyway, two of the baby palms came home with us.
Behind me you see the Christie Payne Mansion, which is on the plot of land, but actually the Selbys lived in a modest house that is just a little bit away from the Christie Payne Mansion. So, why are we here to honor John Davidson? Well, with the formation of the Selby Foundation in 1955, the then Palmer Bank was the trustee of the foundation. Then Palmer Bank was acquired by Southeast Bank. And I could go through a litany of banks since then. And when John Davidson came on the governing board of the Selby Foundation, he became a little bit worried about, would the focus of the foundation ever shift to the headquarters of an acquiring bank? So along with his fellow governing board members, Charlie Stoudemire and Wendell Kent, they worked with the then bank to create governing documents that would ensure the Selby Foundation would always be local.
I think one of my father's favorite business ventures was his development of real estate. I think early on when he found success with the drugstore, he also realized that controlling your own destiny was pretty critical. And being a pioneer in the village, there was the ability to develop the village into a commercial district. So I think early on he was able to buy the land and develop the Siesta Village Plaza, which I think a lot of people knew at the time as Davidson Plaza or Davidson Drugs. And, you know, the name was synonymous with the village retail.
John was a very unique man. I think, you could give him the title of Mr. Siesta Key. He believed that incorporation was the right path for Siesta Key to maintain its charm, maintain its character. And that's what he and I had in common, and he believed in that strongly, and so did I.
And one of the things I will not forget about this guy's commitment and his devotion to his community is he kept fighting to the very end to try to get Siesta Key to become an incorporated town. He told me many, many times that he felt like that was so necessary for Siesta Key. He envied Longboat Key because it was its own town and could control its own destiny. And you got to give the guy credit. Like I said, resourceful entrepreneur. He kept at it until the day he died. So when you look back on John Davidson's lifetime in Sarasota and Siesta Key, he absolutely, absolutely deserves to be recognized for his lifetime contributions to the community, to Siesta Key, and his lifetime achievements as an entrepreneur and a businessman and a family man.